Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, sisters? I pray that you're well. I've just finished a training session for my clients, and I was in wanting to share with you something that a tip that might help you. Um, I get a lot of messages from all of you about how you are struggling with managing your emotions or helping your children manage your emotions, their emotions. You know, they're getting really upset and you can see that they're going to explode, and vice versa. Sometimes that can happen to us where, we're thinking about how they don't respect us, how they don't listen to us, how every time, you do something for them, they're not grateful. And as you're having all of those thoughts, you slowly build up an explosion, and then poof, it's like vomiting all over your children. When we shout at them like that, we have a meltdown. We not only vomit all over them, so they don't understand anything of what you're saying to them. They don't get it. They're not hearing it. They just are kind of like in complete shock that you vomited on them. But also, what we struggle with becomes the complete thing that we do ourselves. So if we're struggling with our children's emotions and how they're managing their own emotions and they're having meltdowns themselves, then us having a meltdown is not what you want to do, right? It just happens. And um, and because of that, we're left feeling worse, more mum guilt, more um, more doom, because now I've reinforced that behavior, and it just gets us into this vicious cycle. Are you, sisters, I mean, are you in a vicious cycle? Do you find that the more you want your children to behave and react in a certain way and respond in a certain way and not talk back and manage themselves so that they can be respectful and they can listen and they can, show you that respect that you want, that the more you want that, because you lose it, the less you're able to kind of demonstrate to them that how you want them to behave, right? Because that's a really bad cycle we get into. What we end up doing is feeling like we're such a bad role model. So we do that because we have an aim, right? I want you to listen. And then we get so frustrated that we behave in a similar way to our children. We have our own tantrums. And then we start getting all kind of stressed out and doubtful about ourselves that we're actually not even a good role model. And there's so many sisters I speak to who will say to me, I'm not a good role model. I want to become a good role model. And it's because what we're trying to model is how to respond in a better way. But the problem we have is we respond and our children respond when we're emotional, right? When we're in an emotional place, you will not see clearly, you will not hear what the other person is saying, you will definitely not see someone else's point of view. And all that you're thinking is all of the thoughts about how can you do this to me? It's so unfair. No one gets me. No one understands me. You know the drill. You've got it going on, right? Children are doing the same. And when we act from that place, it's always an explosion of some sort. Like, even if we're a very quiet person, it comes out as the worst of our behavior. If we're a really loud person, it comes out really loud. But there's always going to be an explosion of your worst self. And sometimes, and you may be like this, you don't explode outwards, you explode inwards, and you suppress all of those feelings, all of that hurt, disappointment, frustration, till you become really, really sad. Actually, there's two cycles. There's the exploding cycle that makes you really sad because by the time you've exploded, you feel really bad now and you're feeling worse than you did before. And then there's keeping it in and suppressing it. And that makes us feel really bad because actually we just get filled with all of that sadness and disappointment and frustration that eventually we're just really sad and we want to give up and we can't. So we feel stuck. I don't know if this resonates with you. If you're if you're watching the recording, please type in the comments below where you are with that. What do you do? Do you suppress? Do you explode? And in reality, you know what? Depending on who we're with, we do both. There's certain people in their company you will feel a bit more free to explode and just be how you are, just be however you are feeling, right? So you're feeling really, really frustrated, you're going to let it out. And then there's other people who, in their company, you're not going to do that, so you suppress it. But both are really harmful to you. And that's what we do with our emotions. Because we don't know how to manage them, because we haven't been taught how to manage them, we suppress them or we explode. And both leave us feeling really bad. And it becomes a perpetuating cycle that we just feel worse and worse and worse. And what I wanted to say to you, sisters, is actually this is the work that I do. I train sisters to learn to manage their emotions and help their own families, their husbands, their children to manage their emotions. And often, sisters will come to me and say, help me with my child. And I can do that. But then if you're still exploding, then whatever I'm saying to your child will never work because they're seeing a different role model, behavior for them, and a different behavior being modeled for them. So the key is that we learn to regulate ourselves. Now, this is something I do over, a year-long program. It's fantastic. It changes your life. You don't even want to leave at the end of it, because you start living a life that you just didn't imagine you could have, and it's beyond your imagination, because right now, all you can imagine is what you have right now. And as you start making those changes, you're able to advise your family on how to get there themselves, because they've seen you do it. If they don't see you do it, that's like your husband who shouts at the kids and then says to you, you shout too much. And you're thinking, yeah, but you shout too. And you're not going to take that advice. So unless someone is modeling that behavior, they're not really going to be able to give the advice. So it's really important that we learn to manage our behavior. And this is why it's really important, sisters. There are so many people that I work with, and that I see and I speak to, who are really, really struggling because as children they didn't learn to manage their emotions. Their parents didn't help them with that, and they've got all of this suppressed, anger and sadness and frustration and hurt built inside. And as a result, they're not reaching their full potential and living the life that they could lead. And because we don't know how to do it, we end up inadvertently doing the same thing on our children, right? In our frustration, we end up becoming, doing the thing that we didn't want to do and we didn't want to happen to us. And that's just because we don't know any different, as our parents didn't know any different. But can we still say that now? We have so many opportunities to learn to manage our emotions. And when we learn to do that, we find peace in whatever trials Allah gives us. And not only do we find that, we can spread that and share that in our home. My goal here, sisters, is to help you have a happy home. And it starts with you. The mother is the key to changing her family, society, the entire ummah. And we can break that cycle now. The cycle that we've been perpetually in because we didn't know how to change it. We can break this cycle now for our generation and all generations to come. Saying that inspires me, makes me want to cry. Look at the impact we can have. Let's have that impact together, sisters. If you're struggling to manage your emotions, get in touch. Let me know and I'll help you, inshallah. But one tip I've got for you today, and it's just a quick tip, it's obviously not the deep work we will do together, but when you are struggling, don't act when you're emotional, right? Don't act in that moment. Practice the pause. When I'm brushing my daughter's teeth, if she feels that she's starting to gag or she's got too much saliva in her mouth, she we do this thing where she practices the pause. She puts her hand up, and I know that I then have to just take the toothbrush out for a moment, and she's going to get a moment to spit or whatever, and come back. And teaching her to practice the pause in those things, or if they're brushing their hair and they don't like it, they might practice the pause. It's almost like saying just stop for a moment. It means that if you teach your child that, then when they're getting really, really emotional, you can teach that. You can just put your hand up and they'll know what practice the pause means. Just pause for a minute, stop. Teach your child that and do that yourself. Practice the pause on yourself. Don't act when you're emotional. Calm yourself down, and I'll teach you, inshallah, more on how to do that. But calm yourself down. don't act when you're emotional. When you act when you're emotional, you always have to go and say sorry, and it undermines the message that you're giving. So I hope that that helps, and I hope that that's inspired you. You can absolutely do this. You can change your life, change your family's life, and change generations to come. And together, sisters, it's time that we break this cycle. You know, let's learn to manage our emotions so that we're not so sad inside. Let's get the light back in your home. Take care, sisters. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.